Okay, we are going to talk about making some of our own natural dyes. So I am going to use just a couple of things that I have on hand, and you can obviously do some research and look into this and find out what you can use. There's tons and tons of things you can use to make natural dyes, but I just happen to have a lot of raspberries that are starting to go bad. In fact, these ones I think are pretty moldy. So let's see if this can get us a nice kind of pink color. And I've got a bunch of turmeric, which is like a ground root that I just happen to have on hand. This is actually from the BSU farm. So I can use some of that, and I've got a few pieces of textiles that I can dye. So I have just a scrap piece of unbleached cotton muslin, and I have washed it and dried it, which is why it's like super wrinkly and kind of shrivelly right now, but I think it'll work really well. I've also got a cotton ball from like the top of a medicine container, and then I'm even going to try, I was going to do paper, but I thought, oh, one better is a paper towel. It's practically a textile, but what we're looking for when we're doing a natural dyes textile is something that's not synthetic, something that's natural. So like these are cotton. I'm not really sure exactly what's in this paper towel, but we'll find out kind of how well it's going to take some of our natural dyes. Synthetic fabrics aren't going to take the natural dyes as well, if at all. So the natural fabrics are going to hopefully give us at least a good tint. Okay, if you do use a piece of fabric, you definitely want to make sure to wash it really well, like scalding hot water, detergent. You're going to want to get off any of the finish that's on top, which sometimes basically they treat it with some kind of starch or a kind of finish that you're not even going to be aware of, but you're going to want to get all of that off because that's going to try to stop any dyes from permeating into it. It's kind of like thinking about treating it with a sort of stain repellent. So we're going to try to wash all that off. So I might just do, while this water, now this is some boiling water, I'm just going to wet this because I also know that that's a good way to start when you're dyeing something, is if your fabric, your textile, is already wet. That way it's going to take the dye nice and evenly. So I'll put those over there and get that going. Oh, and I've also got, I mean, this is something, if you're really gonna find, this is just my tea that I was drinking anyway. So obviously this is another thing you could always dye with. Tea, coffee, those make really great dyes. Have a sip of that. So what I will do is see if I can, ooh, this stuff's so gross, mash up some of this, oh, I got the paper in there, some of this raspberry as finely as I can, into like a paste. And then what I'll do is add my boiling hot water. I could use just even like sort of basically like making a smoothie as the dye, but I think I'll sort of thin it with a little bit of the boiling hot water. And again, you can do some research on this with dyes, anything natural. Again, you could use something that you have, like onion skin makes a nice dye, avocado peels, like scraps from your food. You know, think about if you soak black beans, that black liquid that you pour off, that would be a great dye. Dyes are usually light. They're going to permeate the textile, so you're going to see it on both sides. They're going to soak in, and they're going to make that textile a whole different color. And again, you're looking for at least, you know, a light tint. It might not be as dark as the original. And then it's nice if you can find something that sets the dye to make it permanent. I won't go too much into that since this is sort of just an experiment, but you can look up what would be good to set the dye if you wanted it to be permanent in your fabric and not just wash away. And as we know, even just from life, some vegetable and food stains, you know, they don't come out even if you do wash them. So I'm just making this like really gross smoothie. I'm going to use a bunch more water. Just to give myself something more to play with. I could grind this up in a blender. I've done before where I've boiled it down on the stove, really boiling to get all of the color out and kind of reducing it. And then I can strain all the seeds out with cheesecloth or a strainer or something like that. For the purpose of this, I'm not even going to stress it. And then let's see a little bit of my turmeric. And this is already such a dark, like orangey color. Not sure how much to add here. We won't go too crazy. But this usually makes a really nice bright yellow of a dye. And again, I'm just putting this in like boiling water. So let's see, maybe with our fabric, our piece of cotton fabric, I'll just put that in there. And again, with dyes, and especially something like natural dyes, you would want to experiment with either you leave it in for, a few minutes, which usually, again, might give you a little bit of a tint. I mean, you can see, again, there's so many chunks on there. You can see right away it's turning it this nice light yellow. But if I was to leave this in like overnight, I would probably get a really nice deep color. So you can always try your experiment like that, kind of set it up and then come back even the next day. I'm going to take my cotton ball and stick it into my raspberry jam. And even that, like already, I can see, look, it looks pretty pink. So let's leave those setting in there for a little bit and kind of see what happens. And then just for fun, I'm going to take, now my paper towel has a print on it. This is a really good example of, this is a print that's sitting on top because it's sort of not going through all the way to the other side. It's sort of just sitting on the surface. I mean, it could have been used with the dye, I suppose, but it's more a good example of a print that sits on the surface of the textile and doesn't permeate all the way through. But let's take little pieces of this and we'll test it too. I'll put this in here and it might just totally disintegrate because it's not really a textile. But we'll give it a try, because in case you don't have a cotton ball or a piece of fabric around, maybe the best that you have is going to be a paper towel. So what you'll want to do is, like I said, leave those in there for a certain amount of time. If you want, you can come back and check on it, the next day, or even pretty soon after, and then we'll wring it out, rinse it out. But even this I can see, and especially like compared to now the white of this paper towel, very nice and yellow fabric. And I could let that dry and then see what happens. And then even my paper towel, which has only been in there for really just a little bit of time, is also really nice and yellow, especially compared to the white. So the turmeric worked really, really well. And we can go ahead and check and see. Ooh, so gross. And this is my paper towel. I could rinse this and it would probably be a lot less intense, but a very pinky color. And where's my cotton ball? I feel like that would do really, really well. Let me wring this out. Definitely not as dark as you would think with the raspberries, especially look as I'm wringing it out. It's really just given the cotton ball like a tint. I'd have to rinse it and see. But this is one I might leave overnight and see if I get a more intense color. Okay, so show me your results and you can say how long you left it in the dye bath and what your process was, and show me maybe like a before and after. The turmeric worked really well. All right, good luck.